you on an antidepressant, benzodiazepine or antipsychotic? Don't worry, I got it. Doctor, I'm feeling down. Chemical imbalance, you say? No side effects. Okay. Could it be the fact I lost my job and my boss is a bit of a knob? What's the root of the issue? Doctors will just dismiss you. But you're okay, because today you're listening to the Psych Sanctuary. Hi, and welcome back to the Psych Sanctuary. Today, we are discussing relationships whilst tapering and in withdrawal. And I thought it would be very apt to have Harry here with me because we are currently dating. And he met me, obviously, whilst I'm still tapering. So I thought I'd discuss a little bit about my journey and obviously what Harry thinks about it all as well. I do have Wicket here. Sometimes he snores and things like that, so I will move him if that does happen. But I do like to have him on my lap.
He's a nice lap warmer.
Yeah, he is.
So where do we want to start with this? Well, obviously there's a whole period of your life that I haven't been a part of up until recently.
Yes.
So maybe you start at the beginning.
Yeah, okay. So when I was going through the withdrawal in the pandemic, when all that happened, I was single and actually had broken up with somebody just before the pandemic started. So throughout the whole kind of psychiatric unit era, I wasn't with anyone. And I can't actually imagine that going too well, to be honest. And also because I was so bad that, there was no way that I could have been with somebody. In that time. Or maybe they might have stayed with me. You don't know, do you?
You don't know. Maybe people do find love in psychiatric units.
Yeah. I often think, I often think that if I had been with somebody in the pandemic and I had started taking the lorazepam, they might have said, should you be taking that? Because I was sort of in isolation and we were all in lockdown. We weren't really having those kind of conversations. Anyway.
Have you had any conversations with other people who have been tapering off drugs who did have partners when they started taking the drugs?
Yes, lots of people, loads and loads, yeah. And actually, there are a lot of people I speak to that are in active withdrawal and they do still have their partner, their husband, their children. And so I can imagine how difficult that is.
Is it a common experience for people to feel supported by their loved ones when they're going through this?
I think it really varies. Some people I feel are really supported, but it's so difficult for the other people, even if the person is really supportive, it can be a really long time of having to be supportive. But there's also the flip side of that where people will abandon their family member who is in withdrawal because they don't believe them. They think it's, how could it be going on for this long? And so many tensions arise because I can't imagine being with somebody whilst I was going through withdrawal because I wasn't myself at all. Yeah. But going back to the first question, so I was single in COVID, and when I started taking lorazepam, I basically wasn't with anyone. And then I reinstated the lorazepam after the whole withdrawal situation, and it was in that reinstatement, lockdown had kind of gone and everyone was back to life again. It'd probably been quite a few months of that. And I remember being at my mum's and I had to sign up with a new doctor because my last doctor, they basically almost killed me. They were really, really bad, my NHS doctor. And so I just wanted a fresh slate. I went to sign up with a new one. And actually, this guy was really nice. And I think it's probably because I didn't have active akathisia at the time. And I wasn't presenting as kind of like wild, but he did look at my records and he did say, wow, this is really bad. And I can really see what's happened with the drugs and how they've affected you. And he actually mentioned something called dose of nature over here in the UK, where you go for walks in nature with other people who are also struggling with all sorts of things. Maybe they're a bit lonely, which I thought was really sweet. So I actually did go and do this because at this point, a lot of my friends had sort of, they're still my friends, but everyone had sort of stepped back a bit and it was like starting again. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go to Dose of Nature. So I went along and basically there was a therapist there and I was talking to her and it'd only been about 3 months since I reinstated, but I was already thinking on the matter of love because I I thought, God, how am I ever going to date somebody whilst I am tapering 3 medications? How long is that going to take? And can I really be with somebody in that time? Anyway, I was speaking to this lady about it and I said, I've got all these medications to come off. And she was really sweet. And she said, well, Emma, medication or no medication, everybody is struggling with something.
It's true.
Yeah, that was what I took from that. And I thought, you know what, she has a point. I'm just going to get on Bumble, one of the apps, the joyful apps. And I thought I'd give it a go. And actually, I was still symptomatic. So I had sort of started tapering and I was very kind of eager to get off the medication. But obviously I was doing it really slowly. But as I was tapering, because I was really harmed, even though I had reinstated, I was so sensitive that when I did taper, I did have symptoms of mild akathisia, so restlessness, maybe feelings of falling through the floor, maybe some vertigo. There was all sorts of strange things going on with the symptoms. I still didn't feel normal. But for some reason, something was pulling me just to go on a date. And so I went on the app and I was like, no, yes, no, yes. And I just tried to do it with intuition. Because as you know, Harry, it is strange going on those apps and it's really hard to get like a sense of somebody. Anyway, this guy said yes and we started talking and I thought, right, I'm going to do it. And I don't know what was going through my mind because I was living with my mum, potentially was going to fall into akathisia or psychosis at any point. But I thought, I'm just going to go. Maybe it's that thing of love. Like I just wanted love in my life to help me get through the whole saga. I went along and we met in a cafe. It was very noisy in this cafe. And at that point, my symptoms were really I was having a really restless day. And I was living with my mum and it was really challenging living with her. Lots of arguing, lots of tension. She really didn't want me to be there. And I think we'd had a really bad argument a few days before and it really stimulated my system. And I sort of felt like I was almost going to a setback. But I thought, no, I'm still going to go on this date. I went along and as I say, the cafe was noisy. And I actually had to message him and say, do you mind if we don't meet in the cafe? Because I don't think I'll be able to take the sound levels. He was there saying children were crying and it was really loud. Anyway, so we ended up meeting and going on a walk, and which was great for the kind of akathisia, this kind of restlessness I was feeling. And we walked for a really long time, just chatting away. And actually, it was all right. And it was a good distraction, I found. I mean, I didn't tell him what I was going through, but it was a good distraction. Anyway, this then...
Did you see him again after that? Or?
Yeah. So this then carried on for a year. I mean, obviously we've discussed this already because obviously you're now my partner. So we've obviously gone through this because I know that, it's hopefully not weird for you to
No, it's not weird at all. No,
all.
I'm sure this is going to be really useful for people who are going through the same kind of stuff to hear, because for me, I just can't imagine what it would be like coming out of what you went through and trying to find love again. So it's interesting to me to hear you talk about it as well.
Okay, cool. So a year went on. And in this year, I was getting better. I was tapering. And I did drip feed what had happened to me over time to this certain person I was with. And he actually took it okay. He actually was on an antidepressant for a few years. So he had some experience of it and actually preferred a holistic way because it hadn't helped him with what he personally had. There was a bit of understanding there. It does put strain on because I wasn't well enough to work and I was still going through symptoms. So I couldn't do certain things. I couldn't go to stimulating places. But I also found that, again, it was this distraction. I found it a really good distraction. And I didn't tell him too much initially because I kind of wanted it to be an escape from everything that had happened before, this feeling of being blocked and disowned by people because everyone thinks you're crazy. And it was quite nice to just be with somebody that didn't know anything about what had happened to me and was meeting me for me, which was really nice because you're not what happened to you. I'm not like...
Absolutely.
I mean, it's okay to be a lunatic. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, it was really nice. And I actually found that incredibly healing to do. And when I felt trust to tell him, I told him. But anyway, the year went by and it ended up that actually, funnily enough, he had stuff going on for him. He was quite unhappy in his work and he was really overworked. And we ended up having a few conversations around that. And there was this slight avoidance going on from him about making a further commitment, like maybe am I going to move in? Or, you get to a year. And he started to become quite avoidant and kind of freak out, basically. And we had this discussion about how he felt very depressed and very unhappy in his life. And he didn't feel like he was really able to give me his presence. It was funny that actually that woman said that to me, you know.
Actually, in the end, it was his stuff rather than your stuff that was the end of it.
It was his stuff. It was his stuff. However, this is obviously very different to somebody in active akathisia pacing the room in a really bad way. It wasn't like that, but I was having symptoms and I was sort of having this kind of half life, I'd call it. Yeah.
During that time, did it actually affect the relationship in any way?
It did on occasion. Like, for example, I remember going to a zoo and all of a sudden we ate something and I think it was a whole lot of egg. He's a vegan.
I know the kind of effect that eggs have on Emma as well.
Yeah. Oh, God. I had a lot of scrambled egg and in withdrawal, some people have said that egg is actually very activating for the gut. I don't know what it is about egg, but some people have this and I certainly did. And I felt so unwell. I started having surges of actual anxiety and terror and this feeling that I was swirling. And we were just about to go and see the penguins, which was like my favorite part. And I had to go and get into child's pose on the floor of a field and sort of lie there for a bit. Whilst this egg digested in my system. I mean, that's kind of low key in comparison to a lot of withdrawal stuff, but it felt weirdly that egg gave me withdrawal symptoms. That was really scary. And there was lots of times like he liked fast cars, as you know, and he had this really fast car and I had to keep saying, please, can you slow down? Because actually being on the motorway stimulated my system so much that I would feel like I was shaking like this. And so there was just quite a few times where I got overstimulated. Also, because I was on quetiapine and mirtazapine, very sedative, and lorazepam, all sedative drugs, I found it really hard getting up in the morning. And I felt like my brain was going through this thing where it really needed to sleep. I hadn't slept for so long, probably a good year, really. I know that a lot of people have said, she didn't sleep for a year? How's that possible? But actually, I mean, I did almost pass away. So there probably could have been glimmers of time where I slept, but it was a very long time where it was just, I don't remember sleeping. I would sleep in until, let's say, midday sometimes or 11 o'clock. And I think for him, being a banker, he was really focused on making like millions of pounds. So we were on very different lifestyles at that time. And I think that also caused friction. I can understand if you're in that determined, ambitious place and you've got somebody who's sleeping in till midday, who's, been in a few psychiatric units and a whole load of medication. But he didn't ever say that. However, I do think that started to create a bit of friction.
And that must be quite difficult when you can tell that somebody is not okay with something, but they're not talking about it with you.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly, not to kind of, I'm not naming him, but yes, that was certainly a bit of a troubling thing that we had was communication. I do like to go deep and talk about stuff. I do. And he did not. I'm sure there was lots of stuff that actually he wasn't telling me that was going on for him.
Well, so after that, what happened next?
That ended. And I was very upset about that because it was very sudden as well. I didn't really sort of see that coming. And I decided to go away for a bit. And I was still very much not financially stable. I was still recovering. I still had so much medication to come off and I had to really factor that in. Where can I live that's not going to be stimulating? How am I going to be able to live there? I had to get support, things like benefits and all that kind of thing, because I couldn't keep down, any sort of stimulative job. I remember going away for a bit and various things, moving a lot, like a lot of moving and having to try and find somewhere to be that, would accept benefits, because over here in the UK, a lot of people don't, which is really sad. That was the most stressful thing for me, actually, is trying to find a route to where to be. And the rent was just so extortionate in London. I mean, it sort of doubled in price from the pandemic till now. And so that was also a real pressure for me, as this financial pressure. Like, how am I going to survive in London whilst I'm sort of unable to work, really? So basically, I decided to move to Devon because Devon, I kept on looking at all the rent on Spare Room, looking at rooms. And I was like, okay, the rent gets lower and lower. It goes from 1,300 in London for a room with like maybe a window. And then it kept going lower and lower and lower and lower. And I get all the way down to the coast in Devon, £500. I was like, that's my kind of rent. That's what I want. I really needed that financial break. And also I was like, I need to do something. I need to start this transition of learning another skill, because obviously my acting stuff and all of that really quietened down. And also because I've been so unwell for ages as well, like it all has a knock-on effect. So I was like, right, I've got to start training in something new that is more stable, because obviously acting, it's not that stable. And things have changed since the pandemic in terms of the whole landscape of acting. For example, I used to go in for auditions, but now you make a video at home and you send it off and you just hope someone's going to watch it. That's really changed stuff. So yeah.
But during that whole period in between you splitting up with the first guy you met while you were on this journey and moving to Devon, did you have any other romantic experiences? Were you still on the apps? Were you looking for love actively, or did that just kind of take a back seat because of everything else?
That's a good question. After that guy, I was just like, you. And I just wanted to focus on my healing. I think that it really put this kind of fire under me, like, ugh. And also, funnily enough, he played blues. And one of my biggest things I wanted to do was write an album. New Year's resolution, I'm going to write an album every single year, but I would never happened because it was this thing that I wanted to do, but obviously things were blocking me. And I just had this real fire after meeting him because he was such a good blues player on his guitar. Something about it, I was like, no, I've got to do the music. I've got to do it. That was really part of my focus was I'll move to Devon, have lower rent, and I'm just going to go for it with my music. So I didn't go on any dates. I was really put off, actually, by the whole experience.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that even though ultimately it didn't work out, it did actually spur you to do things that are now such an important part of your life. And
relationships can do that, can't they? They give you a chance to sort of transform through heartbreak. And then obviously I end up in Devon with cheap rent. Oh my God. And I start going to, I picked a place near Totnes because I really wanted to go to this open mic in a place called the Barrel House, because I'd heard far and wide that this open mic is amazing. And it's where you go and sing live and you can get up and sign up to play and anyone can play there. And so that's what I did. And I started doing it kind of quite religiously because I had a real thing for fear on the stage, and actually was very activating with symptoms as well. But as I kind of got better, I was like, no, I feel like I can do this. And that is where we met. And you saw me, he saw me sing What If I Died in the Psych Ward, which is obviously a song that is now on Spotify, guys, under Emma Music. It's also on my other YouTube channel, where you can see the video. What if I died on the psych ward? And it's all about this, what if I died on the psych ward? No chance of the truth anymore.
It was a really interesting way to meet somebody for the first time because I'd never seen you around before. When you walked in the room, I immediately felt this amazing, joyous energy of you. And we chatted a little bit before the open mic. But then when you got up and played that song specifically, and you told your story as well. You stood on, you didn't stand on stage, you sat on stage.
Have to sit. Too nervous.
And you were so open and honest and courageous about sharing that journey that you'd been on. And it really transfixed me, actually. And then you performed the song, and you've got such a beautiful voice and you're a great songwriter. And I was just blown away, really, because for me, it's so important in music that people share from the heart, that they tell a unique story, that they speak their truth. And there you were, really putting it out there in such a raw and powerful form. And yeah, once I'd seen you play, I really wanted to get to know you because of that.
That's very sweet. I always joke about this, don't I?
You do, yes.
I do. Because he always says it in a really like romantic, poetic way. Also, you write poetry and is also a musician yourself. And yeah, you've got this like poetic way of saying things. And I'm like, did you just want to, do you just see me and you just wanted to kind of like, I think the way that I've phrased it that's most accurate is that I had a creative boner at that point. Am I okay to say that? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that I felt so drawn to your creativity and just the way that you shared. And because I'm also a music producer and I do a lot of recording. And you produce my music? Yeah, well, that was it. When I saw you play What If I Died on the Psych Ward, I felt I would love to record this song. And then months later, that's what happened. Yeah, and we recorded it and he filmed it and produced it and everything. So yeah, it's quite an incredible story really, isn't it? As you were talking then, one thing I realised is actually when I did reinstate the lorazepam and I started going on this Bumble date, one thing that was really present for me actually was feeling really gross in myself and not sexy and not attractive or desirable. And that was something I know, it suddenly came up for me because I realized that actually over time I have felt more desirable and I feel very desired. But at that time I didn't, because I was on the quetiapine and the mirtazapine, which really bloat you out. And actually I've got this weird smell to me now, which he calls it oregano. Yeah, you have pizza armpits. Pizza armpits. But it's really weird because I never had the smell before this happened to me. And I do think it's this concoction of medication that's sort of oozing out of my body. And it was particularly pungent when I was in the psychiatric units. And it has lessened. When I was on the quetiapine, I'd actually have complete yellow rings on all my clothes and it would stink. Like it would fill a room. So anyway. It's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, we've joked about this before. I actually smell a bit now. No. Oh yeah, a little bit. Yeah. But we've joked about this, but it's actually quite interesting, isn't it? Because the way that you perceive yourself and the way that somebody you're meeting who hasn't known you before perceives you, it can often be so different because to you, that's a smell that's a negative association because of that. But for me, because it's just the way you smell, to me, I associate it with the way that the person that I care about smells. So it's actually not an awful thing for me. Yeah. And that goes with so many things, doesn't it? Because also, before you've been on this journey, you actually had quite a fast metabolism. You could eat a lot. You were always very, very skinny. And you've told me a lot of people when they're on these drugs can struggle to maintain weight. You really can. And actually, I have to say I was lucky in terms of I didn't gain that much weight, but I know that everybody will relate to me when they're on the mirtazapine or the quetiapine, that the weight you gain is so horrible. And because I was into my fitness, I like being toned and having a bit of muscle and all of that. And also I like feeling fit and strong. And both of those drugs made me feel ancient, heavy, joints are aching, swollen. I wasn't feeling the benefits from exercise and I wasn't able to exercise because I then get symptoms. And the mirtazapine just bloats you just by being on it, just by breathing, you are bloated. And I'm really fascinated when I get off this final bit. Will I go back to, because I was kind of like a sparrow, like my family of, kind of like a sparrow family. Like I call my dad's legs sparrow legs because they're so tiny. And my sister, and you've seen her, she's tiny. We're quite sort of tiny people. And it's not to say that, I'm happy with how I am right now. Like I actually am over time getting happier with that. But I think that's also because I'm on way less medication. I feel like I'm returning to a less water retentioned body, which is just like, but obviously when you met me, you weren't, maybe that wasn't crossing your mind. But that's the thing. It's again, like, that's what I was thinking really, is that I think it's important for everyone to not think about where they are in relation to where they were, but just that when you meet somebody now, they're meeting you as you are, and people can fall in love with people in all sorts of ways. And
just because you feel like you're wearing a little bit of extra weight than you used to. You know, every time I've seen you, I just think, wow, you're just beautiful. And
that's so sweet. Yeah, it's definitely been a lesson for me for my perfectionism and weight. I think all women have a whole thing with weight. But weirdly, I had come from when I was much younger, teens, I did have a compulsive eating disorder. I was never bulimic or anorexic. I just couldn't stop eating. I never made myself sick or anything. It was just this kind of compulsion. And that was definitely from all sorts of things that were going on, parents splitting up, bullying at school, all sorts of stuff was happening at that time. And I did manage to heal myself from that. From probably the age of like 25, I felt completely free and actually really happy with myself. I got to a place where I was like, I like my body. And I really got into my fitness. And so when this happened to me, I was actually quite happy with where I was at, decided to be vegetarian. I had a really healthy regime. And so I suppose it's just like when that's taken away by these medications, you feel ancient and you can't exercise and you've got a bit, well, you know, I know me, it wasn't that bad. Like some people will balloon like 4 stone, 6 stones. You know, people get huge on these medications and so bad for your mental health. So important to feel fit and sexy. That wasn't me farting. So yeah, mirtazapine, quetiapine, weight gain, grossness. Yeah.
So I think like next maybe we'll talk about the night gremlin.
The night gremlin. I call it the mirtazapine monster. Yeah, pretty bad. I would take the medication at night and then pretty much an hour after somehow trying to fall asleep, because it does that weird thing where it feels like you're being swallowed into sleep, I would get up and unconsciously go to the fridge. And it's weird because it's like nothing will stop me. And it's pretty, it was awful because I would eat a whole load of food that also wasn't mine. So I'd eat my housemate's food and I then would go to sleep and my teeth would just have all food in them. Now I've got problems with my gums. Yeah, the night gremlin, very naughty, very naughty.
Yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? Once I started staying over with you, it sort of changed, at least while I was in the room with you.
Definitely, it definitely changed. And because I feel like the night gremlin knows that you're going to be like, Emma, why are you going to the fridge? Why are you eating an entire cake on the floor? Why have you got that loaf of bread in the bed? You know, you would say. So there is like that kind of knowledge that they're having a couple of times, haven't there?
They have, and it can be quite sneaky as well. You can be there, standing there and say, no, I'm awake. I'm just going to go and get a little something. And obviously I want you to not be eating in the night, but then it's also this sort of balance of like, what do you tell your partner, what they can and can't do in the middle of the night? But
yeah. And also it's good because I think you would come if I was a long time.
Yeah.
But I always maybe like, because I know he's there, I'm like, okay, I think the gremlin knows, and I go and just get a banana or a tangerine, and that's much better than a whole loaf of bread. Like once I actually ate a whole loaf of bread and someone's entire carrot cake. And it's embarrassing. And actually, I know that it has bothered people, housemates, where I've eaten their food, and I can completely understand why. And because I wouldn't always remember it, I would try to replace things when I did remember, because it's sort of like a dream. You'd wake up and be like, shit, my God, I ate that thing at like, and so then, and also you wake up and your mouth's full of food or there's like shit in your bed. Yeah, that was a real, and also it's quite triggering for me because I did have that compulsive eating disorder when I was younger. And that sort of did tail off into the night sometimes. I would get up in the night and eat. And so it was weird that it was replaying this thing that I'd already experienced, but it is a symptom. So lots of people on mirtazapine and quetiapine have this night eating, and they will get up and they will eat loads in the night, and you'll get so hungry. It's like that feeling. And I was talking to somebody yesterday that I'm supporting, that feeling before your period or when you're on your period, I'm sure you'll know about this, where you're so hungry and you just need to eat loads. And it's that feeling of like ravenous hunger. That's the feeling that you get in the night. So it's interesting because I'd had that compulsive eating disorder, but then this was now causing a symptom that I had worked so hard to get rid of. But if I hadn't done that work, I think it would have really spiraled my mental health. I wasn't happy about it, was I? I mean, I would talk about it a lot. Oh God, I ate like a whole loaf of bread last night and now I feel disgusting. And
it's almost like it creates this loop of, you're worried about gaining weight because of the mirtazapine, but you're also compulsively night eating.
Yes. I mean, it's horrible, isn't it? Like, if you ate a whole loaf of bread in the night, anyone, you wake up and you just be like, God. And like, oh God, the constipation was terrible. I mean, I regularly fill him in on my poo diaries. I know some people don't like talking about poo, but for some reason I do. I think it's quite an important part of the day.
Yeah.
And that would really affect that. I just wouldn't go to the toilet. Yeah.
I think it's probably quite important when you're going through these things to find a partner who isn't grossed out by these things and is supportive of you and understanding, isn't it? Because it would be awful to have to kind of try and hide it or to put on a brave face about things.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to, I feel like you have been very understanding. And obviously when we first met, I was like sharing my soul in a someone's house in this open mic, and you sort of learn about me. And so it's interesting that people are worried about dating, I suppose, through this. And I had shared in that I had been sectioned many times, but still you wanted to pursue me. So
that was, I mean, your openness and honesty was one of the very many attractive qualities that I saw in you, because I think quite often, particularly with dating apps and things, people curate this perfect version of themselves and they say all the things they think people want to hear. So for me, seeing somebody get on a stage and say to a room full of people, many of whom were strangers, just to lay it all out there, that just felt like such refreshing honesty. And I wish more people were like that, really.
Yeah. Well, thanks for saying that. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's nice to see somebody who's being authentic and sharing their life, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think, as far as romantic connection goes, you want the person that you're with to be able to be honest with you about what they're feeling, what's going on with them.
Yeah.
I think that's the foundation for something lasting, really.
Yeah. And that's the thing for anybody who's been through this, and it's such a huge thing that has happened in your life. It's hard not to tell your partner about it, even if it has been a couple of years and, then you meet your partner afterwards. It is a big thing. And I think it is important to share about it because it is a trauma. And especially when we met, I was still tapering, and I'm very open, obviously, like I'm making this channel and I'm making, I want to create awareness. So it's something that I wear on my sleeve. Whereas I know a lot of people feel very ashamed and they don't want to tell people because everyone thinks they're crazy. And I really understand that.
Well, there's a lot of social stigma around even being prescribed medication. I mean, taking antidepressants even can be something that people might judge you on.
Definitely, especially an antipsychotic. And she's been in a psychiatric unit and she's an antipsychotic. God. Whereas, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But there's so much stigma, isn't there, like you say? What was it like for you, hearing my story, but then getting to know me and getting to know about the medication stuff? Like, was there any moment where you were like, what is this? Because obviously for you, it's like you didn't know about this at all.
No, I knew nothing about it at all. And I mean, for me, the whole process was incredibly eye-opening. I've learned so much from being around you and hearing you talk about your experiences. I want to say, for me, all the way through this journey, it's never made me feel uncomfortable. It's never made me think any less of you. The feelings that always come up for me are just a feeling of, it's so awful that you've had to go through what you've gone through, particularly with it just starting with it being tinnitus that you had, which I also have.
Yeah.
And then all these interesting things come up. We go out to a music event and somebody's going to do a sound healing bath and you have to leave the venue because certain instruments and frequencies can affect you because of what the drugs have done.
Yeah, the sound bowls.
I didn't even know that such a thing was possible. It's like a movie a lot of the time, like, wow, all of these symptoms and everything.
Yeah, it's like a Black Mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like, is this for real?
Yeah. And the thing is that, like, with you, when you're sharing a story about these terrible things that have happened with you, you do it with such dark humor and you can really laugh about some of these things. And like, I'll laugh along and because of the way you tell the story. But then afterwards I think, wow, that was a lot, such a lot to go through.
It is a lot. Yeah.
But for me, that just makes me feel so much compassion for you and care. And just to, I just want to help make your life as joyous as it can be in the present after you've suffered so much.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that. Yeah. Talking of dark humour, I just wanted to say that I do have a tendency to go that way, but I do speak to a lot of people that I support in this, that actually it's quite a good way to get something, this heavy subject, into the room with a new partner or somebody that you're thinking about dating, not to laugh, just sort of laugh about it and make out that it wasn't anything. It's just, a way of drawing someone into it, because it is a heavy subject. I think people are scared to tell people because they're scared someone's going to think they're crazy.
Laughter and humour, it's such a powerful way of puncturing that bubble of, something is tense and difficult to deal with. And I think particularly like in British culture, we kind of have this gallows humour that we do deal with things through dark humour sometimes. And it can be something that really brings people together, I think.
Definitely. And I think it can spread the message. And on this channel, I've had a few videos, and obviously my song that I've shared. And actually I did I'm Not Dead years ago. Is that this way of like transmuting this quite important message, but with this tinge of humor, tends to reach more people, because if it's really heavy, people who haven't been through this are just going to shut down, and they're just going to be like, I don't want to listen. This person's obviously a little bit, she obviously needs medication. She's in denial.
I guess it's important to say that not everybody is going to be able to get to that place so quickly, are they?
No, that's it. And I understand that. I've seen people, when I tell them about this, they're looking at me and you see their eyes and they're just like, okay.
Yeah.
I've certainly lost friends through this, and people judge, and I'm really hoping that with this channel, and the more people talk about this, and I know lots of people are starting to talk about this, but I just think these platforms are so important, because to be othered, to be judged, to be isolated in such a scary experience, and to think that you could never find love again, it's really depressing. I really hope that this gives people hope that you can find people that you can have these conversations with and will have a creative boner over you. They might find your story actually really interesting and touching. Wicket's contributing here. It does sound like I'm farting, doesn't it? I might just put him down quickly for our final moment on this episode.
There you go.
There you go. Okay.
Have you heard other positive experiences people have had of getting back into love and dating while they're tapering?
I have. I know people who are in very long-term relationships, like marriage, and their partner really sticks with them through it. And I always think, wow, that is really beautiful. I do know of people starting to date again, but there is this trepidation. And I think this is where this episode came from, was a lot of people are scared to date again. Because it also feels like you're a different person after this experience, and you have to kind of reclaim parts of yourself and to feel yourself again. But I think dating can actually help, well, with the right person, obviously. I have had some pretty horrific experiences off of all the apps, not necessarily the guy I was with for a year, but like, you can meet people and they're just idiotic. Speaking from a woman, no, I mean, I'm sure it's the same the other way around, but it can also be challenging. So it's just like step by step. I mean, there was a girl that I became friends with who I was helping initially, and she started having an online romance with somebody. And, I could see it was really helping her get through her withdrawal and her tapering. And there's also the thing of like, well, if it ends, there's dealing with that as well. Like that can also be tough in withdrawal and tapering. But I think, what's that saying? It's better to have loved than never at all. And I can certainly vouch for the fact that year that I was with that guy, it was just such a good distraction.
But it is quite a vulnerable thing, isn't it? Putting yourself out there, even at the best of times. So I can definitely understand why there'd be some trepidation. And there's so much pressure these days as well, particularly on women to be perfect, in inverted commas,
Yes, to be perfect, to not stink, to be a certain size, all this kind of stuff. But no, it's definitely taught me to not care about that stuff so much. Like, I like to feel good for me now. I like to not smell for me. And I just like to not feel bloated. And I think a lot of people watching this who are on mirtazapine and quetiapine will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's horrible feeling bloated for anyone. It's like, it actually feels like you've eaten a loaf of bread just the whole time. So yeah. Yeah, well. This is a 10-second intermission. This is a 10-second intermission. This is a 10-second intermission. Okay, we've come back and we had a little bit of a 5-minute break. Okay, no, I mean, what really happened is we watched it and then I realized that there was quite a few bits that I really needed to do. But we did also have a bit of a break. We've got to sort my hair out. Okay. Yeah, it's really important, the bits that I have here. So I really wanted to talk about the anhedonia that people can experience when they are on an antidepressant or a benzodiazepine or an antipsychotic. I experienced anhedonia when I was going through the withdrawal and when I was on all the medications, this feeling of numbness. I couldn't feel anything, but I also couldn't feel anything down there in the vaginal section. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that because I speak to a lot of people that actually have numbness down there. And sometimes people find that it doesn't come back for a really long time. And I just wanted to say that mine did come back. Interestingly, it came back with the reinstatement. So when I reinstated the 0.5 lorazepam after being in this withdrawal for such a long time, and I could feel pleasure again.
That must have been quite a relief for you.
It was a relief. A bit of TMI now, because what would my podcast be without too much information? But I think it's the stuff that like I speak to women about who are going through this, and men. We can all feel a little bit ashamed, but actually having pleasure during sex is extremely important, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So anhedonia is quite a common side effect of these kind of drugs, is it?
Yes. So anhedonia is very common, and it's also not all about the vagina, but it can affect that. And it's also this feeling of just dead emotion. Like I can't feel happiness. I can't feel joy. I don't feel anger. I don't feel anything. It's just this flat feeling. And I speak to so many people on the coaching calls that have this. Yeah, it's a pretty shit symptom to actually be stripped of any emotion. Could you imagine?
Yeah, that sounds awful. And is it something that tends to go away over time, or are people stuck with it for their whole lives?
I want to give encouragement because I thought that mine would never go away and everything came back. So it's that feeling of everything had died and I was never going to see it again. Like something was so damaged in my system that I just thought, well, that's it. I would like to encourage people that I believe the people who have had this for a long time, that there's still hope that it can come back. However, I do hear stories of people that have had it for a really long time and perhaps that is never going to come back. But I also speak to people who it does come back. Even after a couple of years or a few years of withdrawal, it comes back. Mine certainly came back. I thought I was damaged for absolutely ever. It's really sad though when I speak to people who have experienced that because again, it's such an important part of our lives as human beings.
And not just the sexual and intimate part, but just to lose your emotions generally must be devastating and leave you feeling quite hollow and less human.
Absolutely. Empty life. I really wanted to talk about that, even though it's a bit of too much information, that I did end up getting the feelings back there back, and actually the feelings back in here back, which is just so deeply important. Another thing I wanted to talk about, which was very important, and I speak to a lot of people about this, is being sober, dating sober. And actually before this, I did drink wine quite frequently, gin and tonics. That was kind of my preference. And if I went on a date, I'd probably have a couple of gin and tonics or a couple of glasses of wine. And I wasn't very used to dating sober. And I know a lot of people have this as well. Also socializing sober. It's a very different lifestyle. And after the reinstatement and tapering and all of that, I was very aware that drinking for me was never going to happen again. So when I met you, we have never had a drink together, have we?
Yeah, that's true. It's crazy, isn't it? I also spent 12 years not drinking at all. And then in early 2025, I actually not fell off the wagon because I wasn't an alcoholic, but I started drinking a little bit again. So when Emma and I first met, I was actually drinking a bit at parties and when I went out. But it was something that I quickly dropped again because I don't really feel the need for it. To be honest, drinking again reminded me of why I'd stopped drinking. So
yeah, that's quite refreshing actually for me to have met somebody who it wasn't your absolute lifestyle to drink, which is a relief.
It's such a part of British culture, certainly going out. We drink when we go out to clubs or socializing. It's a social lubricant. And it's so interesting when you step away from that, how different it is to go out. A lot of people do meet their partners out at a club or something. And their first experiences of kissing their partner are often when they're drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was certainly a transition for me to have life with no lubricant.
That sounds really bad in this episode about dating, darling.
Well, there was no lubricant in my life for a long time in terms of down there and up here. But now there is some down there and I'm really glad that it's come back. But the lubricant of wine and alcohol gives you that kind of relaxed feeling, going out for a couple of drinks. Sometimes it loosens things off a bit. But when you go in sober, it's very interesting. I definitely had to learn how to just sit with myself and in the vulnerability of not drinking. Because a lot of people would say, do you want to drink? How come you're not drinking? Oh, are you sure you don't want to drink? Are you okay that everyone else is completely fucked and you're here sober? There was quite a few instances I experienced of that. But it's interesting when this happens to you with the drugs, is it's such a line on the floor of like, I cannot drink again. This could give me akathisia. And I hear this a lot, people who have healed for a couple of years and they actually decide to have a sip of beer or some wine, or maybe they have like a few glasses of wine or something, and it really sends them to a very bad place, to a very damaged place where the withdrawal comes back again. And it's almost like they're right back at square one. So for me, nothing is worth going back to that place. And so I've really had to learn how to sit with myself in social moments where maybe everyone else is getting wasted and I'm not. And actually, I would say that it's been so refreshing to meet you who that wasn't part of your life, but I have lost some friends that was very much part of their life. And so they don't call me now to go out. They don't think of me as a person that might want to go out and about. And I still love dancing and I love socializing. So yeah, it's funny how it's so ingrained in society.
Yeah, in the previous episode, actually, when you were talking through your life story up until this point, you talked about coming back to yourself. And I think it's actually part of that journey, isn't it? I mean, alcohol is also a drug that you had to come off. We do live in a society where a lot of people are self-medicating in one way or another, and that alcohol is a crutch that people are leaning on, especially socially. So sometimes these experiences can actually make you question those things.
Definitely. It really made me question that because I really wanted to stop drinking before. I knew it was a crutch and it had become a crutch. And actually, I think I saw some sort of podcast recently and someone was talking about how alcohol actually changes your brain chemistry, which obviously makes complete sense. And that's why alcohol has such an effect for people who have been harmed in this way. Because obviously with benzos, a lot of people who are watching this will know what the GABA receptors are in your brain, which are really affected by the benzodiazepines. And also just all the receptors in the brain that are affected by all of the drugs, the antidepressants, the benzos, the antipsychotics. When we drink, alcohol actually affects the GABA receptors as well. So there is a very direct connection to the receptors in the brain that both alcohol and psychiatric medication touches.
And it's worth mentioning, I think, that even if you're somebody who loves dancing, you can find ways to go and do that where it doesn't have to be a club where everyone's drunk. We go to ecstatic dancing, for example.
Yeah, sober dancing. Yeah, absolutely. But for a lot of people, that is actually a big deal. I speak to a lot of people who would find that kind of thing absolutely horrifying. And I understand why. It's like that self-consciousness. I feel like an idiot. But there is such freedom to a sober dance. Once you get out of your head and you realize that actually there's such a purity to the whole experience, a euphoria. What I also realized is a year from being sober, I started to have these quite euphoric feelings. And I think I was just so grateful to be alive from the whole experience. But it was just this natural euphoria. Like I'd look at a sunset and I would just feel euphoric, or I'd be dancing at a sober dance and I would feel absolute euphoria. Whereas actually when I was drinking all those years before, I never could reach that state. I do feel like there is this kind of numbing that happens, especially if you drink daily. But we could go on and on about that, couldn't we?
Could.
Yeah.
I think the last thing to say on that is really, it might be scary, the thought of going out and meeting somebody sober, but actually you're getting to know somebody for who they really are on a day-to-day basis, and they're getting to know you. And that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's that you're really meeting each other and just sitting in those uncomfortable moments. It's okay. You're being authentic.
Yeah.
Right? So what have we got next? Okay, sex. I wanted to talk about sex, even though I've sort of spoken about it a bit, is that actually a lot of people worry about having sex and it overstimulating them when they're really harmed. Like having an orgasm can be very stimulating. And I do hear this from people who are harmed, that sometimes after having sex, they can feel a rise in symptoms. From my experience, I was definitely worried about having sex because I was like, oh my God, imagine having an orgasm and then I'm stuck in akathisia and something, triggers something in my system. But for me, it was actually incredibly healing. And it's such an important part, again, of human existence is to have an orgasm. And my body was just like, oh, thank God, something natural and non-chemical coming through my body. So I just wanted to say that if you're a little bit worried about that, it doesn't always have to lead to symptoms. For some people, it can stimulate symptoms, but it can also be incredibly healing, right? Yeah. And on that, okay, this is definitely too much information, but when I reinstated and I could feel pleasure, I could feel joy for my dog, I could feel happiness, I did kind of want to see, it was pretty quick. I was like, I do want to see if my vagina is back online. And so I did, I did masturbate to see if she was still there, and she was.
Hallelujah.
No.
No, really, no. I just couldn't resist. Praise the Lord.
I remember sharing that story with you and there was a slight disturbed look on your face. But I think people who go through withdrawal will really resonate with that. Of like, oh my God, I'm back, or you pop out of a window, or maybe you reinstate, or something happens. And I just want to stress as well with the reinstatement that it doesn't always work and it's not always the cure. But for me, it worked in that moment. If you do have that sort of moment, I'm sure you'll relate that you want to just check everything's working.
It's good to make sure everything's working, just from a practical point of view, right?
Absolutely. And to finalize the too much information section of this podcast, I wanted to talk about pregnancy and timelines. And I will do an absolute separate podcast to this, but I think because in relation to having a partner and meeting somebody at the age I am, which is now 39, this all happened to me 4 years ago.
4 or 5.
4 or 5. So I am 34.
Around then.
Yeah. So that's a pretty prime time. A lot of my friends are having babies and that's a big chunk of time. And also, if you're someone who has lots of medications to come off, you're fearful of the pregnancy itself. I really understand that. Like the symptoms pregnancy can give us, hormones. Hormones really can be very connected to withdrawal and add to many symptoms, many distressing symptoms. I know around people's periods and things, symptoms can get really elevated. And so for me, meeting you, I do want to have children. And I'm definitely a believer at this age that you've got to be pretty out there with that. You know, if you're on a date, maybe not the first date, but I was kind of clear, wasn't I, to say.
You were, yeah. And we discussed that very early on in meeting each other. And interestingly, things happened in my personal life that actually changed the way I was feeling about it as well. And now I very much do want to as well. But for many years, it just didn't feel like it was on the cards. So sometimes these serendipitous moments happen that change everything for you.
I did voice that I really wanted to have children, and this whole thing had really put a fucking spanner in the works. And will I ever have a child? Also, I don't even know if I can have children. And I have thought about how withdrawal, how does that actually affect me? I was really unwell for a really long period of time, all that medication, not sleeping for basically a year, what that does to the body. My period stopped in that time, all sorts of things. My immune system got the shit knocked out of it by the whole thing. I had this horrible infection in my bum cheek for like a year. I then had to have an operation on that, but there was all sorts of health things going on for me for quite a long time. And I do wonder how that has affected my body. I haven't done a fertility test, and I think I've taken that route because I don't want to panic, because I know friends who have done fertility tests and it said it's a very low chance of you having a child or it will never happen for you, and then they get pregnant. So I just don't want that. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about that because I know a lot of women miss, or they feel like they miss the chance to have a child because there are these fears around what's it going to be like if I'm still harmed from a medication. And that has been my worry with mirtazapine, because I'm on 3.5, actually 3.2 as of a few days ago, is that causes sleep problems and insomnia. And at this dose, it's very sedating. People are given the 3.5 for sleep. And so I'm aware that I'm getting to that kind of realm of getting lower and lower and lower. And the fear of like not sleeping, because I know people experience insomnia coming off mirtazapine. And then you've got getting pregnant and all the hormones that come through your body and how that can actually cause insomnia. So for me, those have been my worries. And also, can my body handle pregnancy? Because when we are very sensitive, our nervous systems are so delicate in this whole process that all those hormones coming into the body and all these changes, that has also been my worry, is can my body handle it?
As a man with a woman who has been harmed by drugs and who wishes to have a child, I feel like it's not my place to chime in on this so much. I haven't done the research. I don't know that much about the process of pregnancy or the process of tapering from drugs or withdrawing, other than what you've told me. So I feel like my role is just to be as supportive as I can and trust your decision-making throughout this.
Yeah. Yes. No, you're so sweet. It's really a sweet human being. So finalizing on the pregnancy subject, I really relate with anyone out there that is going through this and they're wondering if they're going to be able to be pregnant and thinking that it's never going to happen for them. I am holding this kind of hope that there's still a chance for me and that my body is an incredible healer. I've done really well to come this far, and I believe anything is possible. There's also the factor of having tapered all these years and not gone away because I've been too worried to go outside of Europe, or I haven't had the money, or I haven't felt well enough to go traveling or do anything like that. And I think all those years, and then there was the pandemic where we couldn't really go away. And there is this surge in me that I've still got so much I want to do. And it has definitely put a delay on lots of things that I probably would have done by now. And it's that moment, isn't it, of like, right, now I'm ready to have a child and have the child drain the life out of me for the next 5 years of their childhood. What do you think?
Hearing everything you've said about your story to me and what other people are going through, it just feels like so many people's lives are being put on hold by this. And there's this urge to catch up and to make up for those lost years. And I can completely understand why people would feel that way when they've been through this. It's just a horrible, horrible thing to have gone through. But with you, I just think it's amazing that you have this joy and this light in you that you want to make up for lost time. And I hope other people out there can also feel that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, thanks. And if I one day do get pregnant, pardon me, I'll just go in with a letter to say, I have bind. Please do not give me any benzodiazepines. And to be really forthright with that, because that's what I was like with my operation for the bum thing that I had. I actually had a letter from the doctor to say she has bind and she has sensitivities to medications. And I think it's really important to have a letter. So, yeah.
How dangerous can it be to be given other prescription medications when you're in this place?
Yeah, it really depends what it is and also where you're at. If you're really sensitive, some people will just react to anything. But things like antibiotics and certain antibiotics can be so detrimental whilst we're still healing. And again, taking another benzo, going under general
anesthetic
is okay. I got him to say that because I'm dyslexic and that word really jars me. Just making sure everything is okay, double checking. Don't let them give you just piles and piles of antibiotics for absolutely zero reason. Yeah. Less medication, the better. Also, they can give anti-sickness as well when you have a general
anesthetic,
which I have heard can cause problems for people. And I actually, when I went through my operation, I asked them to remove that. There's just certain things, but I'm going to do another podcast about operations and antibiotics and things. But again, this has come up because we're talking about pregnancy and trying to make a baby and what that might entail. Birth. Yeah, really looking forward to that. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast.
Yeah, and it's been a pleasure being here again. This will be the last episode where I'm in front of the camera, I think. Well, for a good while, perhaps. But I'm going to be behind the camera and working away in the editing room with Emma to keep trying to make these as good as we can make them.
Yeah, it's been amazing to have your help. And, I mean, don't speak too soon. I could get him doing, I don't know, some other kind of character work in front of the camera.
Perhaps I can just play the role of an evil doctor on an episode.
Yeah. I hope that wasn't too much TMI for you, but I think it's important to have too much information sometimes. Sharing is caring.
Better to have too much information than not enough, I think.
Absolutely. And if you would like to subscribe to my channel, I would really absolutely love it if you do. There'll be lots more podcasts coming. I won't say too much about what. Thank you for joining us.
And if you've got any feedback for Emma as well, you can email the psychmedsanctuary@gmail.com.
Very good point. Please do. And please, in the comments, by all means, share your experience with anything related to this podcast. It's so nice to see your comments, and it's really good for other people to see that this means a lot and this is a thing.
And that you're not alone.
Yeah. Love. Okay, we've done it. No, you were brilliant.
Oh.